Hello, family. Welcome back to the Explore the Extraordinary podcast. My name is Betty Guadagno, and today I'm joined by Rebecca Kastl. And Rebecca is a spiritually transformative experiencer. She's a healer. She's an angel reader. And I met her at the IANDS conference in Washington, D.C. this year. And I saw her presentation, and it was so genuine and just so authentic. And I really appreciate that in a person, like just getting really vulnerable. So I'm so excited that you wanted to come on the podcast, and I'm going to give you some space to introduce yourself to our community. Thanks so much for your service.
Thank you so much, Betty. I loved meeting you at IANDS, and you were so generous to come to my talk. It was the first time I'd ever shared about it, and having your energy. I didn't really know your story at that time, but it was just so lovely to see you in the audience and receive your support. So I'm so excited to be here to talk more about my experience. I'm just going to tell y'all the whole thing. It was basically like a real-time near-death experience that lasted over 2 years. It was a spiritually transformative experience that I had in my 20s, from age 26 to 28. But for some of my background, like how it came about, I was born into like a very scientific family, very skeptical. My dad was an MD PhD, so he was a doctor with a PhD in biochemistry, and my mom was a psychologist. So we didn't have, I guess it was material reductionism, they call it. It was like no miracles, everything is science. And I was also interfaith. So my background was Jewish and Christian, and I was kind of raised with both of those influences, even though we were skeptical. At age 13, I had a trauma that was really awful. It was a sexual trauma, and I started having PTSD and nightmares and anxiety and depression, but no one knew I'd gone through it. And so I didn't tell anyone, and I thought it was my fault. And I just thought if I could study and be perfect on the outside, that it would make it all go away. So I was kind of doing an outside in approach, which didn't work. Eventually, even though I graduated from high school with top honors and college top honors, I was having like breakdowns. And then I finally had to get serious about healing. I went to therapy. Therapy was very helpful. I learned a lot in therapy about talk therapy and getting good frameworks for life. And eventually I graduated therapy, and they said I was fine. My therapist said I didn't have that many problems, but I thought that I had a lot of problems. Maybe she's right. But I did know that there was still something that felt wrong, like internally. No one could tell me that it felt wrong. I just felt like something was on top of my heart. I needed to get underneath it. There was just more healing to be done. And that was at age 23 that I decided to really devote myself to healing. I remember telling myself, I'm going to heal all the way, and warning out there, if you're going to decide to heal all the way, you might end up seeing a light or having some kind of really out there experience. So when I decided to heal all the way, that's when I met my Reiki teacher, and I met a yoga teacher who helped me a lot. My Reiki teacher was very kind and patient. I did not believe in anything she told me, but I knew it was helping me. So I was going to her regularly, and then I started studying with her. And that's really how I started to develop kind of an awareness of a spiritual reality. Listening to my heart, I started to do that more. And the yoga just allowed me to have like a framework for like physical wellness and sleeping better and all of that stuff. So that's how I set the stage for my STE that came at age 26. So from 23 to 25, I was really just focusing on healing. I got really stable, and I applied to graduate school, and I got in at Teachers College at Columbia University, and I moved up there for graduate school. I was doing great, but in January of my first year there, I fell ill. I don't know if it was the flu or what, but I had a fever, and I was in my apartment, and I was reading a book called The Tunnel in the Light by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And those two things together, I think, just really got into my spirit, my soul, because as I was getting better, I wrote in my journal. I always wrote in my journal, I still do, but I was writing in my journal, and I felt like I was overcome by a feeling, and I started crying, and I wrote that I wanted to devote my life to God, which is really how all of this started. So I wrote in my journal, "Dear God, I have decided to give my life to you, and whatever that entails. I want to be guided by you, by the light. I will work hard to follow this path and bring it to fruition. Please help me do this. Please help me bring light to other people. Thank you. Amen. And in the moment, I was really crying, and I felt it very strongly. It was like a real vow that I'd taken that I just didn't mean to take. I just wrote that. And then that's when my whole experience started. So that night when I went to bed, I saw a light come over my bed. It went from one end of the room to right above me. And as soon as I saw it, I knew it was real. Even though my mind later was trying to tell me it wasn't, I just felt like it could see me. I felt like it knew me. I could tell that I was hiding parts of myself, and I was like terrified to be seen by this light, even though I'd started doing a lot of healing. And I just told it to go away over and over again. And I just said I was scared. And then the tingling in my head started happening. And I know you've talked about this with your experience. It's just, I didn't know what it was. I thought it was a headache. I told this to Pooja in the other podcast. I looked at my boyfriend. He was like sleeping next to me. And I was like, what is this headache? Is he having it? Like, what's happening? And it just kept spreading. So much peace, so much beauty. It was like, just felt like love and peace going through my head. And then I just felt a voice when I let go into it. And it said, you don't have to be afraid, but if you are, you can wear a hat. And it put a graduation hat in my mind's eye. And of course, I didn't know anything about this kind of stuff. I tried to change the hat. I was like, that's not cute. And I was like, I don't like that hat. I mean, just the fact that I was talking back to this God, it's like so bold, like not nice of me. But anyway, then it stopped. It just, once you do that, like it stops. So the next morning, honestly, I haven't told this before, but I called my Reiki teacher freaking out the next couple of days because I was like, I saw a light and I don't know why I saw a light. And it took me going through with her. She was like, what was wrong? What were you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, she was like, were you sick? And I was like, I don't know what happened. And I was like, oh yeah, I devoted my life to God when I was writing in my journal. And she just busted out laughing. She's like, you devoted your life to God in your journal and you don't know why you saw a light. I was like, I just felt it was like she was just laughing so hard. I was like, okay, of course that makes sense. But I honestly hadn't connected it till I talked to her. So I started having over 2 years, like all of these experiences that came to me that were like the learning. So I made this promise. I gave my life to God, and I needed to like learn a lot of things so I could live in alignment with that promise. The first was that I saw light inside of everyone. The next day, just like it was literally like pouring out of everyone, like they were just gorgeous, like light bulbs inside of them, and just ethereal light. And it was just unbelievable. And that was very strong right after, but it still continues to this day. I started having psychic dreams with guidance. So I was able to have dreams about things that were going to happen to me, or if my friends need something, or my family, something's going on. Dreams about relationships that I need to I had a dream I needed to end my engagement to someone before I met my husband. I did that. It's just learning to listen to it has taken time, but they're very different. Those dreams are brighter than my regular dreams. So I also saw how everyone's connected. So this was a little bit like a life review in real time. So as these 2 years were going, I remember I did something hurtful to my sister by accident. It was just an omission. I just was not being aware of her. And I just felt immediately how much that hurt her in my heart. It was in my body, I felt it. So I was learning how much we're connected, and I can't, really hurt other people I just couldn't do that anymore. Also, learning how important it is to be kind. So just how much it means to others when I'm kind to them, and how much it ripples out to everyone. I also started feeling surrounded by angels. So it really was those 2 years I was totally surrounded. And it was really when it ended that I noticed how much light and angels had really been around me. But I had a time when I was going to sign up to study abroad, and I felt 2 really tall angels next to me telling me not to do that. It was like they went all the way up to the sky. It was really, really cool. And I was learning to just trust that. At those years, I had to be really in tune. I've seen little angels since, and felt them. So that's kind of how I started to do my angel readings, were those connections. I saw a future timeline of my life those 2 years, and other small timelines during that time too, when I was making different decisions. It was like, wow, every decision we make really does put us in a different path. Not always bigger or smaller, but this was the timeline when I was going to write a book. And I was going to write a book about Judaism and trying different parts of Judaism. And I opened my computer to write. And everything, like my entire life, if I did that, flashed before my eyes, like bad reviews, feeling dejected, never recovering. And just, it was like so real. It was like I lived that life. And then I had to, I just closed my computer and was like, hey, I get it. I'm not going to do that. It was like watching a movie, but being in the movie. And then I stopped having my nightmares. That was one of the big ones. That was towards the end of my 2 years. I had these nightmares of demons after my trauma. I wasn't raised to believe in demons, but it was pure terror at night for me. From the beginning of my trauma, I would be awakened and demons would circle me. And I would just be so scared and I wouldn't be able to move. And that just was on and off for years, for 13 years. And then when I was awakened this last time, the demon was around me, and it was just awful. It was like circling me. It was trying to get into my heart. And I said, you can't hurt me. God lives in me and works through me. And I just said that over and over again. You can't hurt me. God lives in me and works through me. And I wasn't afraid of it. I just looked right at it and I wasn't trying to fight it or get away. And it just went away and they never came back. And that was like a really big thing. So I do work with some of that in my healing. Like if someone's had a negative entity, I'm not afraid anymore of that stuff. So I'm able to kind of work with them. And then the end of the 2 years was this beautiful dream that I really ended my experience. I was dreaming that I was in my room talking to this beautiful glowing angel that I really thought was a real person for a long time that I was going to meet, but he was glowing and I was talking about my life. I was saying life was hard and I didn't know what I was doing. And he just was so beautiful. And he looked at me with so much love, like all the way into my heart. And he said, the world is beautiful. You need to go have a great life. It's such a gift to be alive. Go have adventures, go live your life. And then I was like, when am I going to meet you? I have goosebumps just talking about it. And he said, when you're finished swimming. And so the dream shifted into me being lowered from a huge ship down into the ocean. The ocean was a still, calm ocean, and I just had to start swimming out. And that was the end. That was the end. I was swimming, and I woke up the next morning, and it was over. Like I just felt like all the light was like had been around me, and then it was just over. The whole world just felt so still, and that was it. I was like, I kept thinking I was going to be done swimming like every few months and then every few years. And then it was like over time, I realized like I was going to be swimming the rest of my life. And swimming meant learning to live a spiritual life in the world, keeping my connection to God, even if God is not like, learning to do my part. And just how to share with others and uplift them. So that is my whole experience. And thank you for listening.
For sharing. Wow, so much came up for me. I really love this last part that you're just talking about and experiencing this angel and this message. And I know that in many areas of dream interpretation, bodies of water represent consciousness. So to think about when you're finished swimming, like when you're finished getting through all of consciousness, like, okay, see you soon.
I know. That's a good way to put it.
Okay, so some things came up for me. I didn't realize that you were at Columbia University, and I was wondering if you had ever like made the correlation, because A Course in Miracles was channeled at Columbia University, which is a metaphysical text channeled by Jesus, and you happen to be in the exact same like location grid. And I wonder if there's some sort of connection there with spiritual experiences.
As you're just saying that, I have so many goosebumps, and I think it's a possibility. I just feel like there was some kind of energy that I like accidentally or on purpose, but not consciously tuned into, because I mean, I feel like I've got a little bit of that. And honestly, when I have opened A Course in Miracles, I have heard like the voice of like angels singing before, like the music of the spheres, which I don't always hear, but there was a time when I opened that book and heard angels singing and then closed it. And it was so powerful. I did it like 6 times. But no, I think that there's definitely something there that I tapped into. I mean, that book popping out at the bookstore for me, that really that I read that changed my life. I mean, who knows what other people are having spiritual experiences up at Columbia.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like such an intellectual school too. I'm sure they're all just like discounting it as coincidence. That's so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Memo to self, sign up to go to Columbia University to have a
Yes,
spiritual
you should.
experience. Um, so another thing that you mentioned was about the tingles. And
Mhm.
there's so many times when I'm walking around and I experience kind of my crown chakra filling up with tingles. But, you know, like I live in New York City, so I think like, oh my God, is a bird pooping on me? Is there a bug in my hair? Like, and I don't want to like mess up the stream. Like I don't want to mess up whatever's
Yeah.
coming on and activating and downloading. But I always get like really nervous and I'm like, oh, there's bugs in my hair. But that was just really
So
funny
funny.
that you
That's so
mentioned that.
funny. Yeah.
So, having a dream about breaking up with someone, I kind of want to talk about that a little bit.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, my partner is always so scared that I'm gonna like get some sign that says that we should break up because I got a sign that we should be together. And he
Oh.
like lives his life in this fear that like some sign is gonna manifest and our relationship will be over. What was it like actually trusting your intuition to really carry out that decision?
It was so hard because I was engaged. And I'm sorry to say this, but part of why I got engaged to him is because his name was Jonathan, and the angel in the dream told me his name was Jonathan. And that's like 50% of the reason I got engaged to him, because I still thought it was a real person, even though I was like, I don't really seem like that guy in the dream. But I'm sorry to say that he was a lovely person. But I was having multiple dreams. Like 2 years into our relationship, we'd gotten engaged. And it was just like I was just having dreams that I needed to end it. It was like that the ring didn't belong to him, that the ring needed to come from someone else. And it was like I was waking up like, oh my gosh, I have to end this, and this is going to be so hard. And I just didn't want to, and I wasn't at a place where I am now where I was like that good at listening to guidance, because it's taken me a long time to really hone that. But I knew I had to. And whenever I do listen, it's like things just kind of fall into place. And it was really scary. We were living together, but I did it, and I felt horrible for hurting him, but I knew there was a higher reason, and it was part of my life. I had to end it. So I think if I would have been listening better in the beginning, I might not have gotten to that point, but I was still not sure about all my experiences. So tell your boyfriend not to worry. If you were listening to your guidance, you want guidance to be with him, then that's, I think, the right thing. And I think he's in good, he's fine.
I love that. I'm like, why are you expecting for a bad sign? I love that
Oh.
though. Can you maybe talk a little bit more about the journey to really trusting your intuition and trusting that guidance? Because I think a lot of people struggle, like, is this my imagination? I'm making this up, and just declaring things that, you know, make it really challenging to
It's so
actually
hard.
trust.
It's taken me so long. But a true guidance from my heart, it's almost like I always have known that, even when I started studying Reiki at 23. A lot of it is for me has been meditating and learning, like, what are my thought patterns, what is the buzz of my regular thoughts, and then what is something that's coming in from a higher guidance, at least in terms of thoughts. But also, like, if you feel in your heart you're supposed to do something, it's just trying to avoid it. Like, if you try not to listen, which is I've done, like, my life just kind of falls apart. Like, there's like roadblocks like everywhere, and difficult passages. So if you're trying to do that, if you're feeling something in your heart and you're not listening, you'll just notice that maybe things are getting harder. And if you start to heed it, and things start to get easier. But just tuning in and like starting your meditation practice, asking for guidance from your angels. They're there to help you, and they'll make signs for you to make sure that you can hear them, because they're not going to leave you here alone. So
I love that. Wow, that's so beautiful. Okay, so you also talked about timelines while you were sharing, and I'm wondering if maybe we can chat a little bit about that.
okay.
How do you conceptualize what a timeline is? Can you
Hmm.
jump timelines? Maybe share a little bit about what you mean when you're
Well,
talking about it,
I
just in
love
case
that
somebody
concept.
doesn't know.
Yeah, I mean, timelines are, I think, and I'm not an expert on it, I've just had these experiences. It's like a path that your life is taking. So, and like right now, I'm on this timeline where I devoted my life to God, and And for a long time, I was not on the timeline of sharing about it, or maybe I was eventually, but now I've jumped onto the timeline of sharing. So it's like the path. And if I hadn't done that, my life was going to do a different thing. So when I saw the possible timeline, it was like, if I took this choice. So it's almost like you take a choice and the split. It's like that movie Sliding Doors, I guess. And I think there's the other newer ones, but what happens? And it's not bad. It's just like different choices lead to different outcomes, and you're not alone, but like listening to your heart allows you to have like the best timeline. My stepdad called it the red road. He was a Houma Choctaw Trator, like medicine man, they call it in Louisiana. So he would say, if you're on the red road, you're living like your highest path and all the doors are going to open for you. So that's kind of like trying to get to that timeline where you're really tuned into your heart and you're really benefiting, you're blessing those around you, is really what I try to do. But it's hard. Honestly, after seeing that timeline and having I would have echoes of other timelines as I made choices, especially during those 2 years, it became really hard for me to like make a choice and stick to it, because I was like, how many timelines am I missing here? Like, which one's the best one? But it's just, you just have to take each step and trust.
Do you think that those other timelines are happening somewhere?
I think so. I think, do you, I want to hear what you think, because I think deja vu is part of that. What do you think?
I think the same thing. I think that yeah, it's such a big concept though. I think it's hard to kind of wrap your mind around how could there be all of these alternate realities happening at the exact same moment. But that was part of my spiritual download. I experienced the same thing. I saw multiple different timelines that if I made these different decisions, this is what would happen. And most of mine ended like in very tragic death. And it was
Oh my gosh.
death and rebirth and like, having to come back and do it all over again. So, it was like, I love how you said before, like roadblocks will come up and your path will get very small. If you're experiencing a lot of resistance, unless it's your own internal healing, like your own internal wounds that are blocking you, but it could also be the fact that this is not the path for you. And maybe you need to reroute. And, people get, I'll just talk about me. Like I get so stuck on one idea that I'm like, no, I will make this shoe fit. It will fit, and it's just not meant for me.
So true. Wow. Yeah. It's such a big concept, and it's really, really, it is crazy to think, or it's interesting to think about how many timelines are happening, and we're just going to be in this one. We're in this one right now. Let's make the best of it. Keep raising it. And I think you can switch timelines. I think that I switched timelines a few times because I wasn't always, on the best path for me. And like always just as soon as you take that choice though, and you align with your heart, it's like all the angels, your guides, they're just like, all right, cool. Like we're ready to help you get there. It happens pretty fast.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. That was definitely my experience as well. Just, that spiritual surrender, letting go and trusting. For me, I had to really get a firm foundation in faith to do that. And I was never going to find it myself. So the universe just like plunked it on my head. Like, okay, fine. If you won't believe, then we'll make you believe. And just started seeing the craziest things that you could ever imagine. And it kind of sounds like it was the same thing for you. Like there was no denying what was happening in your life. Right. Did you have moments of distrust where you were like, okay, I've lost my mind?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I remember calling my boyfriend at the apartment, like right after I saw that light, and just like checking if he could see all the same things I could see. Like, did you see this thing on the window? Like all of the things he could see. But he was like, why are you asking me this? But I did go back and forth because I wasn't raised to believe in any of this. So but now I really am really very sure in my beliefs and that what I experienced was real and true. So, but I definitely doubted it on and off for years.
So is your family still skeptics, like the way that your parents raised you? Do they still have those kind of rigid beliefs, or have they swayed?
My mom is actually spiritual. And I think part of what got me on this journey is that she had her own born again experience when I was in high school that I didn't know about, but she bumped up her spiritual path. And I think it allowed me to bump up mine. And that's like, mothers are so powerful in our lives. Now, my dad is a total skeptic. Like I once told him to get grounded because he was really upset. And he just laughed in my face. He just started cracking up. I was like, okay, that's not even that weird of a thing to tell someone. But I love that about my dad. It's helped me really question and like come into like a sure belief system, because it wasn't just like something I accepted right away. Yeah.
I love that. Well, do you want to talk maybe a little bit? So you broke up with your fiance. So because you had this download to do that, or you had this vision and a dream. And
Yeah.
so do you maybe want to share a little bit about the journey to finding your husband?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's really fun. I mean, my husband and I met really shortly after I ended my engagement. Um, and and honestly, we just started dating. I met him actually going through a workshop for children, and he was a coach. And the first night we hung out was in New Orleans. He just said, "I think I'm in love with you." And I was like, I don't know. Like, I literally just ended an engagement and I was just kind of dating in my life. And I was 35 at that time because I was pretty, anyway. We basically just started dating, and we got pregnant almost right away, and that just bumped us up. And I guess it was all meant to be, because here we are with a life together. And he is a skeptic too, and I actually appreciate that. He says he's an atheist. I'm not sure, because he had a dream we were married like the second time we hung out. So, I'm like, okay, tell me you're an atheist again. I keep having those dreams. But yeah, no, we've been married almost 8 years, and neither of us really thought we'd ever have that. So it's been really, really cool.
So
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's always so amazing, what the results are of following the guidance. We get kind of tangible proof that there was a reason for everything.
Hmm.
And yeah, I love being able to hear that. So I'm wondering, will you talk a little bit about what it's like to be in the space that you're in, to have this connection to angels, to be a healer, to be
Yeah.
very in tune, to really follow your intuition? How is that? How do you incorporate all of that into being a mom?
Um, I think being a mom is like a huge area of growth for anyone. For me, I feel like I can be the nicest person to everyone, but suddenly with my daughter, I'm like way more impatient than I should be. And it's just helping me to really, and she's the most precious thing in the world to me. So just learning to just really be present, be patient, and just honestly being in the moment with her and appreciating all the beauty that is just comes from being around her, from us being together. But I do try to listen to guidance about her if I get it, but so far it's like she's just on a good path, and I haven't had, she's only 7. Let's see what happens when she's a teenager. Because my mom was very psychic, even though before she became spiritual, like before she had her born again, and she knew everything I was doing all the time. It was awful as a teenager. She was like, I know you're doing some wrong. Anyway. uh but yeah, I will just see how that goes. I guess it's just, honestly, all those beautiful fruits of the spirit, like love and kindness, forgiveness, just practicing that daily. So
I love that. I always think that it's so fascinating when I get to meet a mom who is
yeah.
into all of
Oh,
this, because I
that's
think, like,
sweet.
wow, like, are you like laying crystals on your kid's head like when they go to sleep? But no, of course, you're just a mom. Like
Well, I
you're
mean, I guess I could do all that, but I have done like she okay, now she does love crystals. She will steal any of my crystals that I have, but she just plays with them, I have given her Reiki, especially when she was a baby, to help her go to sleep. Um, yeah, I mean, I used to try to figure out what her past lives were, but I don't know if she could remember them, because I would be like, "What do you remember before you were born?" And she'd just think nothing. Like, "Mom, stop. What do you?" Like, other kids are born into the families where they remember their past lives, and the parents don't believe them. And here I am, like, begging for info, and she's like, "No."
I do the same thing with the kids that I have in my life. Now
Yeah.
they're like all kind of aged out, but when they were like 3 years old and like started to talk in full sentences, I'm like, "Do you remember where you came from?" And they're like, "Mommy's belly?" Question mark. And I'm like,
So funny.
so funny. So okay, I want to hear maybe a little bit about what goes into an angel reading. Talk a little bit about what
Oh
you're
yeah.
doing for the collective, what your spiritual entrepreneurship is. Share with us so that if people are interested, they
Yeah.
can reach out to you.
Oh, I would love to, yeah, I love doing my angel readings. I just started offering those in the last few years. So I got all these collections developed during my experience and after, but it was almost just like they were just kind of floating around. And then to offer angel readings, I've really developed a system where I tune into your angels. And it's different than a psychic reading, because I'm not just reading the field. I'm actually tuning into like your angels and guides. I call them in. Well, first we raise our vibration to love and joy and peace and light and all that beauty, and we both together raise it, and then I call them in, and it's like I feel them come in right up here, and they are just so loving and so excited to share. And I just hear what they want to tell you, and I tell you what I hear, or they'll show me pictures that I need to describe to you. And it's more just, they're just making sure you're on your path. So it's like every time a reading ends, it's just like, you just feel so good about yourself because I mean, it's just like, wow, I'm like, I have a soul that is cared for and loved, and I'm on this path. And, they give advice about what you could do on this path. People ask questions. Usually I'll read, like I'll just say what I get, and then I'll give space for questions. And so they usually just answer what you need to hear right now. And it's not like, they're going to tell you details of like the future, because it's not just about reading for the future, it's about your soul's path in this lifetime. So just making sure you're on it. And they're never going to be mean though. They're always so supportive. It's like the nicest reading ever. It's like, you're doing so great. Here's what you're doing great. And like, maybe you could practice doing this more.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure like in angel school, they're taught to use that compliment sandwich, like
Yeah.
great thing to work on, great thing. So
Yeah,
that
that's
you
so
feel a
true.
little bit more encouraged.
Yeah.
Do you find that you have people come to you that are actually in states of distress, or are these people that are just looking kind of for confirmation of what they're doing?
So I have had some of that, mostly because in person I'll do readings at this shop here called Ritual and Shelter. Lovely, sweet shop. And I do readings once a month on Sundays. This Sunday I'm doing readings. They're sold out. I have 8 readings in a row. So we'll see how that goes. But sometimes people have walked in there when there's like a cancellation. And I once had one woman come in who was just sitting quietly, and I was getting a lot of stuff about drug use and getting on the right path. And I just kept reading, and I was like looking at her for confirmation, because I never just want to, if it's not correct or it doesn't resonate, I definitely want to hear that. But she just was crying the whole time, just like silent tears. And then I just kept reading for her. And at the end, she just said, "Thank you so much." So that was definitely probably the most distressing reading I gave. And I'm really hoping she went out and got on the right path for her after that. But yeah, I have people come, they have things happening in their family, and they want to know what's going on with their children or their brother, their spouse. So I read for that, and they give advice about that, about how the person can help the situation or better.
So cool. I'm covered in goosebumps. That's really powerful. Thank you for your service to the collective. That's such a huge gift that you have and that you're able to share. So thank you so much for that.
Thank
And thank you
you.
so much for taking time to chat today. Full
So
disclosure,
fun.
everybody, we did this once before. This is our redo. And it
Redo.
was so great. So many different things came up for me listening
Yeah.
to you. And just like in the month that it's been, like, I really feel you so much more like grounded in sharing this. And you have a
Thank
really
you.
powerful testimony. And I love the idea that you're giving back now. Like we don't just have these spiritual experiences and then say, hey, we're done. It's like really
Right.
about being of service to the collective. And I love the
Yeah.
path that you've chosen to be of service. I just want to see if there's anything else that you'd like to share to feel more complete about our time together today.
Well, I will share. I've been laughing about what happened at IANDS when I'd never spoken about this experience for 15 years. I was scared to talk about it. And then I got an urge to apply to IANDS to speak when I got their email. I just followed a little bit. I didn't join any of the groups. Now I do, but I applied to speak, and then I got accepted. And I remember going to the conference and telling someone, I've never talked about this before. And they were like, "You've never talked about this, and you came to a national conference to talk about it for the first time." And I was like, yeah, I guess that's how I roll. So now it's like, I was like ready to share, and here I am. I'm ready to talk about it. So thank you for having me, because it's been really great to get to share with you. I just think you're amazing,
Oh my goodness.
honestly.
I love that. You really busted out of the spiritual closet with like a whole ball gown on. You're like,
I'm
let's do this.
here.
So great. That's so great. I look forward to seeing how the relationship with you and IANDS continues to grow. I think that you have such a powerful healing modality, and I think that it could really be utilized in our community so much. So we'll talk more about that. And I
Love
just want
that.
to thank you again, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.